In this lecture, we will review leadership and power in IO psychology. Now, what if I were to ask you a few questions like, what is the best way to lead a group of employees? How would you answer me? What about, are the best leaders born or trained? When people make lists of famous leaders, there is such diversity in their choices that it is difficult to imagine what those leaders actually have in common, other than being in charge of something. One of the problems may be that each person has a different definition of leadership. A general definition of leadership focuses on the ability to persuade a following to make a commitment to the goals of the group and to work towards those goals. The definition of leadership also leads to further distinction between leaders and managers because of the way those terms are used in organizations. They often are used as if they referred to the same behaviors and positions. However, although the terms have much in common, they are not the same. An example of a manager would be the head of a clerical group in a company who has appointed to that position by the head of business services. Leaders are typically chosen by the groups they lead. An example of a leader would be the head of a local union, elected by the union members. Leadership is the ability to persuade a follower to make a commitment to the goals of the group and work towards those goals. It is a social process, though, which an individual intentionally exerts influence over others to structure not only their behaviors, but also their relationships. Now let's dive into the theories of leadership. In the same way that the different organizational structures are linked to research, knowledge, and culture of a particular time, leadership theories reflect the research, knowledge, and culture of particular periods in IO psychology. At certain times, either biological, which is the nature side of the nature versus nurture argument, or behavioral, which is the nurture side of the argument. So, biological, which is the nature, or behavioral, which is the nurture theories, have been the more popular explanations of leadership. Biological explanations of behavior suggest that leaders are born, not made. Behavioral explanations suggest that leadership is learned through certain experiences. Most psychologists look to both explanations for a complete picture of human behavior. Theories of leadership includes trait theories, behavioral theories, contingency theories, implicit leadership theory, transformational and charismatic leadership, and power. Now, trait theory is based on the assumption that effective leaders have certain characteristics, either learned or innate. Don't forget, when we're talking about the nature versus nurture perspective, the nature side of the argument says that the person was born that way. Their genetic or biological factors influenced who they are. But the nurture perspective says it has nothing to do with biology or genetic. It's simply environmental influences who shaped that person. The basic tenet of trait theory is that certain traits or characteristics are common to good leaders. If a company wants to hire good managers and leaders, it should make a list of the traits that are needed and then find someone with those traits and put them in a management position. The earliest trait theories believe that good leaders are born with these traits and that these traits are a constant part of the manager's personality. That position later was modified to indicate that the traits could be developed through experience. But the traits still were viewed as core personality characteristics of the leader. Now moving on to behavioral theory. The basic assumption of behavioral theories of leadership is that the important factor in determining leader effectiveness is what the leader does. That is, their behaviors, rather than any of their personal characteristics. The basic assumption of contingency theory is that the effectiveness of the leader is determined by a combination of their characteristics and the environment of the leadership situation. Although it is not easy to change enduring personal characteristics, it may be easier to find situations that enhance the personality of the leader or change the situation to fit the personal characteristics of the leader. Implicit leadership theory views leadership as the outcome of a perceptual process involving both leaders and subordinates. Now moving right along to transformational leadership. Many leadership situations are based on an understanding between the leader and the followers. Transformational leadership is based on a social contract between the subordinates and the leader, with the promise of rewards in return for certain behaviors. And the charismatic leader is based on the personal charm and emotional appeal of that leader. So, the ability to inspire followers provides the link between transformational leadership and charismatic leadership. The followers of a charismatic leader do what the leader wants because his or her personal charm, magnetism, and emotional appeal leads them to do so. Charismatic leaders inspire their followers to meet the personal goals of the leader, which may not be the goals of the organization. The characteristics and behaviors most commonly associated with this style of leadership were summarized by the following list by Conger in 1989 and Dubrin in 1994. First, charismatic leaders have a vision they share with their followers. Second, charismatic leaders excel at communications. Third, charismatic leaders develop limitless feelings of trust among their followers. Fourth, charismatic leaders develop feelings of competence among group members by planning for their success. And fifth, charismatic leaders have a very high energy level that contributes to an active leadership style. So what type of leader are you or you wish to become? Do you adhere to the trait theories or behavioral theories, contingency theories, or implicit leadership theory? What about transformational and charismatic leadership? Which leadership traits do you believe that you possessed more so than any other? Let's tap into the power and leadership. Power is an individual's potential influence over the attitudes and behavior of one or more individuals. It usually stems from one of these two sources: position power and personal power. Regardless of whether the employees, the leader, or both have the power in organizations, power is an important component of the leadership process. It is tempting to match the strong use of power with leadership effectiveness. Leadership power typically comes from one or two sources. In position power, leadership control is derived from the leadership's legitimate status in the organization. In personal power, leadership control is derived from the characteristics and skills of the leader. The three subtypes of position power are legitimate power, influence based on formal position of the leader; reward power, influence based on the leader's ability; and coercive power, leader's ability to punish subordinates. There are two types of personal power. They are expert power, where the subordinates believe that the leader knows more, and referent power, where influence is based on the leader's personal attractiveness. Now, let's talk about the use of influence. Although a supervisor may try to implement all their subordinate suggestions in order to encourage them to respond to their use of an expert power base, power bases rest on the ability to exert certain kinds of control. The actual change in behavior or attitudes is referred to as influence. So, influence is the exertion of control over others in a way that results in changes in their behavior or their attitudes. The 9 different types of influence tactics are as follows. First, rational persuasion. The leader uses logic and facts to persuade the followers that a request will lead to the desired outcomes. Second, inspirational appeal. The leader uses an appeal to the followers' emotions and inspires confidence in their ability to do the job. Third, consultation. The leader actively wants the followers to participate in work where their support is an important factor in getting the work done. Fourth, ingratitude is where the leader tries to get the followers in a positive frame of mind or to feel good about the leader before asking them to do anything. Fifth, exchange. The leader offers a trade of time, favors, or other benefits if followers do what they want them to do. 6. Personal appeal. The leader asks for the followers' help based on the loyalty and friendship they feel towards them. 7. Coalition. The leader enlists other people to persuade the followers to do certain behaviors and tells them about the support of the others as the reason why they should agree to their request. 8th, legitimating, where the leader bases their request on their position power. And 9th, pressure. The leader uses demands, threats, or intimidation to get the followers to agree to their request. Now, moving on to personal variables in leadership. When leaders have the same personal characteristics, such as gender or race, research has shown that those attitudes add more variables to the leadership process. Research also examines the effects of gender, race, and culture on leadership. Now, the best part of this lecture, I think, for you guys is considering ways to become a more effective leader. After examining the different theories and variables of leadership, it may seem that the only realistic conclusion is that there are no consistent effective methods of leadership because so many variables influence the process. Although there are many different leadership styles, situations, and variables, researchers have found a number of common features among effective leaders in numerous situations. The first is competency is the management of attention. A really effective leader has people wanting to join them. Followers are attracted by leaders' outstanding commitment to their goals, outcomes, and direction. The second competency is management of meaning. Followers may be attracted to a leader because of the leader's commitment and focus. But if the followers do not understand what the commitment is to do for, leadership cannot be effective. The most effective leaders use every part of themselves to convey meaning to their followers. The third competency is the management of trust. The issue here is consistency and predictability. Even if the followers do not agree with the leader, there is no doubt about where the leader stands and what they stand for. The fourth competency is management of self. The most effective leaders know what their strengths are and their weaknesses are also, and how to use their skills in the most effective ways. The management of self also means taking responsibility for one's actions. So, are you an effective leader? Do you use your skills to want people to join you? Do you use every part of yourself to convey meaning? Do you send the message of trust and predictability? Do you send the message that you are the leader and you are accountable and you are there for the long term? Do you know what your strengths and weaknesses are? And do you use your skills in the most effective ways? And do you take responsibility for your own actions? Well, as stated throughout this lecture, the most effective leaders have competencies in the management of attention, meaning, trust, and self. Above all else, when effective leadership works, it is profitable not only for the organization, but to the leader and the subordinates.